So what's the last year in your journey been like since we last spoke on the podcast?
Well, life has changed completely since the last time we spoke. I think it was June last year. I just did the kind of consolidation phase and we were heading into investment. So since then, I've continued with the investment side of things and we've been building, building, building. Um, Life changed quite a lot between that time. So, at that point, I was going to the gym at 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. And that worked really well for me, weirdly enough. And it was November time, I think, where my personal circumstances changed quite a lot. And I was put in a situation where I could no longer go to the gym. So I became a single parent at that point. And one of the comments that were made to me is, how are you going to get to the gym now? That was kind of parting words, which was a bit of a tough one. And it put me in a bit of a spiral because for me, training is my anchor. It's what I do day to day and it keeps me going. And I thought, actually, how am I actually going to do this? Because I can't get to the gym anymore. And I got so angry. I remember telling Nathan, I was so annoyed. I literally went into Fitness Superstore one weekend. I walked in there and I said, right, I need adjustable dumbbells, I need a bench, and I need a barbell, and I need 80 kilos of weights. And a few days later, all my equipment arrived, and I made my own gym, which actually it still sits in my living room at the moment. So you get lots of videos of me training in my living room at the moment. But it was, that thing that I gained about the control. When I first started the R&T journey, it was without that, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did when I was put in a situation where I felt things were out of control. So things were taken out of my hands. But when I did it, when I first started the R&T journey, that put me in a spiral which I couldn't control. And what I learned about myself is, something happened again that I couldn't control. But this time I found I had coping mechanisms so I didn't fall into that rabbit hole again. So I bought the equipment and we started training from home. So, even in light of COVID, I had the equipment, although like with everyone, the routine had to change again, and I totally understand, like, I got myself into a routine where I was finding how to train, what the best time to train is. And, I still trained at 5 o'clock in the morning. Then COVID hit this time round and everything went out the window because my kids are back at, they now needed homeschooling. And I was working from home full time. I was trying to train and my kids are in the way, and my sort of solitude, my space became the unknown again. So I tried to move around things and it wasn't working. So I think with everyone else, there was this frantic kind of, how do I make this work? We're going through that kind of journey there. You just find your structure, and the structure keeps on changing and it's just adapting to that structure. But yeah, since then, I've been heavily into investment phase, and Nathan and I have got a photo shoot booked in November, so I'll be doing a cut very soon, which will be exciting. But I want to see what I can achieve. I've never had a photo shoot on the cards before.
Sounds like a complete turnaround in your life. Well, first thing I want to ask you is, when you lost that control and you had a choice of coping mechanism, knowing what you used last time, whether it was food and was it food? It was food, right?
Yeah.
Food. How did you break that trigger, and what made you think, okay, no, this time it's not going to be food. I'm going to use training and really lose myself in my training instead. How did you make that change, given it only been about, say, 18 months since before?
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult because, coming out of consolidation, I think people don't realize this, that you can do, I mean, I think I handled consolidation quite well. So this, we reversed out quite well, but I still associated myself with who I was before. So this 60-kilo girl, and I didn't know what the 48-kilo girl looked like. I didn't have a differentiator. I was still one and the same. And it took me a while to break that association. So, as we went through deeper into the investment phase, I realized that food was just fuel. It's just fuel for me now, which is very, very different to me. Because before it was absolute food was my crutch, and actually now my training is my crutch, but not in a negative way. It just sets me out. If I train well in the morning, my whole day goes a lot better. So food is no longer that comfort factor for me. Whereas my training and having a set time to do certain things is my comfort. So if I lose that, so when I was moving the training around and trying to do it in the evening or trying to do it in the middle of the day, I found that was throwing me off a lot more than my food would have done. Whereas before, food was the absolute driver of everything. So now I just use food as just something that helps me do everything else. It's not the comfort factor anymore.
Talk about the identity shift that you've gone through. You said you're previously 60 kilos for so long. You went down to 48. We talk about being in the shape of your life for life. It's now been a year since your checkpoint, and you've held pretty much the same weight, or you're intentionally trying to build some muscle. So you've made that identity shift to someone who's lights out. Talk us through that process of what it's been like over the last year to rewire your brain into living, breathing, acting like a new person.
It was difficult because when you've been at this bigger weight or this person for such a long time. But I was the married mom of two for a long time. Maybe not the mom of two bit, but I was I've been married for a long time. So I always associated the 60 kilo person as that person. And then when we came out of it, into getting out of the process, of losing the weight, I still wanted to weigh myself. I looked at the scales, and if they were moving, that used to really, really irritate me. Like I thought I was doing something wrong, but I know that wasn't the case. But I still had this fear of becoming that big person. And then it had to be understanding that you're not that person anymore. And what you're seeing in the mirror is that person, this new person at 48 kilos. But it's a difficult association to break. And I struggled with it quite a lot, actually, where I was afraid to move. Like I'm a very routine habit person. And I like eating similar things all the time. But, when I was put in a social situation or, I was faced with something like pizza or the things that were associated to the 60 kilo Sanj, I found that very tough, and I would consciously avoid it. And it was only when I broke the association with buffering and make it a part of normal life and go and have that pizza and understand that it's not going to put you back to that place if you manage it well and not dwell on it, have it, move on. And you have strategies in place, but you move away from the process phase. I think once you move away from that, you break that association and you become the new person. And shifting from food to something else. And the something else doesn't have to be training. It has to just be something else that is not food related, for me anyway, because that was my thing. It was me feeling sad eating, me feeling angry eating, or not eating. It's breaking away from food and finding something else.
Talk about that move away from buffering. That's something a lot of people struggle with in that they hit their consolidation, but they're still buffering on a day-to-day basis. And me and Nathan were talking about it yesterday, in that people play the body weight game where they haven't nailed the process, haven't nailed that behavior change, but they just still buffering heavily. They can't go to social events without having a crazy buffer because they don't feel in control of that situation. That's a massive identity shift in itself. Talk us through that process of gradually coming away from relying on that strategy.
I think one of the key things that we did is stop weighing daily, because for me that was an issue. So if my weight had changed, I would automatically want to buffer if I know there was a non-planned meal coming up. So if I know that I was going out for a meal with someone, then I would want to buffer heavily. And I think it's understanding that when you move past the process phase, it's not buffering anymore. You know, if you want to move towards a lifestyle solution, you can't have that mentality of buffering, because then you are chasing that number on the scale. And I think people always attach themselves to a number on the scale. You know, when you move into a 50-kilo woman or whatever you are, you want to stay there, and you're fearing the other side. But it's only when you start doing it, you you have to do it, and you may have to make a mistake to realize that you don't have to buffer forever. You just let that day go and carry on. Like, as long as you come back and stick to your plan, then you'll be fine. It's okay to have a day, as long as you're not going too crazy, but not think about food so much. Go and enjoy other bits of it. It doesn't have to be revolve around the food.
I think it's really good advice. We've got Nathan here as well, and I want to ask Nathan, who coaches you on your journey. Nathan, like, how do you, for people who are struggling with this, what are the early signs that you might be playing that body weight game too much, or you might be struggling with that shift once you're in consolidation and you're heading towards that long-term lifestyle solution? How do you know, what are the early signs that you might need to do more work and deeper work on this rewiring, and that you may be playing the game too much with body weight?
Yeah, it's really, really right. It's like a false investment phase that people go through, or a false consolidation, where they deem their consolidation successful by the body weight that they are, but not by the process that they do daily. I think one of the biggest signs is that you're on diet calories during the week. That's a big one. Like investment phase people, like Sanji right now, you're maintaining your body weight. Your training day calories are 2,150, and your non-training days are 1,950. Like that is heaps of food. And what people do is that before they get to that point of that investment where you are right now, or with their loads of calories, they eat 1,400 every single day, and then have a big one at the weekend, and then can't justify going back to normal eating on Monday. And they go around in that cycle, in the fearfulness of trying to get that body weight down. But you play that game, and buffering will always come and bite you in the butt, from the perspective of always cycle dieting, even in investment phase.
What's the first step to get out of that?
First step to that is having enough calories to remove all the signs of, like, let's say, hunger and the cycle dieting mentality of always being in the deficit. If you have a period of 1 to 2 weeks, 3 weeks of steady calories every single day, a lot of hunger food focus goes away. Whether it's a diet break or actually an investment phase, you're going to move away from lots of dieting based symptoms. And then the second thing to move away from that is not judge yourself based on your results. It's actually judge yourself on the process. And rules that you have. If you're hitting your 3 out of 7 rules on a week-to-week basis, you're going to obviously fall short in terms of the goals that you have. But like if you're focused on your process, ticking those boxes every day, ticking your transformation checklist, you're never going to have that focus on if you go up by 0.5 kilos, and then the trickle down effect of what that 0.5 kilos does to your confidence, and what it does to your mood, what it does to your lunch. Taking out your rice or not having lunch, or doing different things like that. It's going to be a trickle down effect to both not understanding that fluctuation in body weight, but also what happens when you're constantly dieting throughout the week, and then having one day where the calories are super, super high.
When you're in consolidation mode, and now you go to social events and you don't have that checkpoint anymore, but you start thinking, well, what do I do for this event? How do I manage them? I want to hear it from both sides. So from Sanj, I want you to talk about it from a client perspective. Like, how do you make that shift away? Because your automatic norm is, okay, I need to make adjustments here, adjust here, and then I need to calculate exactly what I'm having in advance. And then I want to hear from you, Nathan, like what strategy should you have for that? So let's start with you, Sanj.
I think for me, it was the rules didn't change. And I think, Nathan, it was quite important that you brought the rules about, actually, because the rules were the things that drove me away from the diet mentality. So we had things that were non-food related, or non-exercise related. They were more to do with my lifestyle. Like, do I put the phone away at a certain time? Am I eating my meals at a certain time? So I've got certain rules during the day that dictate my whole day, that are not to do with dieting.
What are they?
So I've got one of them is, which is my pre and post porridge oats, which is very important. But aside from that, it's not looking at the phone after 9 o'clock. For me, gratitude was a big thing because of the way my circumstances went. It got even worse than what happened when I was told, when I became a single mum in November. My circumstances changed even more so just before COVID. And it put me in a very bad place again, where I was looking at my identity and, my self-confidence just went to the floor. So I was questioning, am I good enough? All those real negative things. And if I didn't have those rules in place, it would allow me to go back to that old person just because I couldn't find I couldn't cope. So I think the rules are really, really important to have so how it takes my mood, it affects my mood and everything. So I have to do gratitude every single day. I have to put my phone away at a certain time. All those things are really, really important. But I also have rules for social events, and I had them in the process phase. I don't think of them as dieting rules as such. They are just my rules. So if I go to, which we haven't done in a long time, but a wedding, I still have a 1-plate rule, and that I don't associate that to dieting. I just think that's a way of life for me. That's a normal way to live. You don't have to, it's not all about diet, but that should be a normal part of your process and a lesson learned from the process phase.
Just on that, how did you get out of the shift? How did you get out of the mindset of it's not only just diet? How did you start thinking about rules, thinking about performance, thinking about the holistic nature of the whole journey?
I think as you go through the journey, you realize that there's a connection between your mental state and your physical state. And it's only when your mental state is right that your physical state can be right. That took a long time for me to get to. And, my whole journey was all about mental health anyway. But having that association with that fat person or bigger person, you have to work through that, that it's not a diet anymore. It starts off as a diet, but actually the structure that I built moved away from the diet. Like I eat at certain times of the day. That's not a diet for me. It's just the way I live. That's my life now, and that's what makes it a lifestyle solution. Like everyone knows that I eat. Like she's having a lunch. It's 2:00. Like for some people that will make no sense whatsoever. But for me, I won't change my lunch times because that is my new lifestyle, and I structure everything around that. The rest of my day kind of slots in around certain things, not just meal times, but training for me is in the morning. My steps are done by a certain time because that frees up my day to do other things that are really important to me and things I need to get done on a day-to-day basis.
I 100% agree. I just want to echo that as well and say that the way that you, from coaching you, the way that you made that transition just from diet focused or the body weight focused is that you went through extreme challenge and came out the other side. You went through these dips every single time, and I remember every single challenge that you've been through, and every single my check-in was that the last challenge that we went through is preparing you for this next one. And we went through the whole 78 weeks now of going, what you're going through now is preparing you for next time. What's preparing you for next time? Preparing you for next time. That whole thing where we realigned your structure of your routine when you were doing the process phase. Then you had a family death, and then that you got through that guide by going through the dip. Then we sorted everything out after the family death. Then we got back into a structure. You had the grind. Then you had something else, and then it's starting to serve itself. But that only worked because you went through the dip. Because what would have happened if you didn't go through the dip of those circumstances, which is credit to you completely, is that you would have not learned anything. You would have just, said, okay, well, I'll come back to that later, or it's not really important to me, and then you start the cycle again because you don't just stop midway through. When you're part of that journey, you hit a challenge and you either choose to go through it or you actually take a step backwards. So I think for you, that's how you made that change as well. Is at the beginning, there were some elements of mental health that you wanted to change, but the physical change was the driver. And then when you hit that challenge, when you overcame that challenge, that's when it solidified that the physical was the vehicle for you.
Yeah.
And that's incredible. And I just was saying, I was like, you've been through a lot of stuff, and to be able to sit where you are right now today, it's incredibly proud for me to coach you through that, because you've been through extreme challenge and you've come out the other side. Like, embracing the dip is your middle name, you know.
I remember. Sorry.
No, I was going to ask you. No, you go first.
I was just going to say, Nathan, you meant, there was a time where he had to, like, he was very empathetic towards me. Like, but Nathan, like, obviously we've been working together for a long time, and he understands the way I work. And as much empathy as he gave me, he also said to me, you know, there was once, and he just said, it's not going to change the outcome. Now, whatever you're going through now, the outcome doesn't change. So I was still going to end up going through my divorce. You know, that was still going to happen. So it doesn't matter what's happening in between. The outcome isn't changing. So don't lose track of what's happening now. Like, don't let the dip get the better of you, because the outcome doesn't change. If you spiral out of control, that thing's still going to happen in the end. And it was having to lean into that and say, oh shit, he's right. You know, I still trained. There were certain things that I still did, no matter how bad it got. There were certain things I still did. That was an identity thing. That was who I was. You know, I now train, and nothing was going to stop me from going down that spiral where I wasn't able to do the things that I needed to do to make my day okay. You know.
Do you credit the ability to not pack it in during the dip for that identity change? Is that the reason why? Because we see it a lot of times when a dip comes, people pack it in, and they'll say, oh, I'll come back to self-care, or I'll come back to taking care of my physical, my mental well-being when I've got the time or when I've got a clearing. But do you credit your ability to keep going because of an identity change, or was there something else?
No, I think it was to do with an identity change, but I think my personality is like that anyway. But I think I learned a lot about myself during this. You know, like, you know how you guys use the analogy quite a lot, like the life jacket analogy. Like, you have to put yours on first before you can help others. Now, if I said my self-care can wait, I need to focus on my kids, which I did focus on my kids. But if I didn't look after myself at that point, there's no way I can look after my kids. You know, and my kids needed me a lot during this time, because I was their everything. They were struggling with what's happening, and then COVID hits at the same time, and they were completely lost. And they can't have a mum who's crumbling to pieces because she's decided that, you know, her health is not important to her. And I'm talking about both mental health and physical health. But if I didn't sort myself out at that point, then I couldn't be the mum that I needed to be to them. And there was a time where, you know, they'd come downstairs and I'd be in tears. I would just be sitting there in tears. And then they used to look at me and they said, are you okay? I thought, I can either hide it or just say, no, mummy's a bit sad right now, and talk to them about it. And then they were able to cope a lot better. But it's only because I addressed the fact that I was sad at that point. Like, if I just hid it under the carpet, like, you know, if you hide all your emotions and not go through that dip, and, you know, that is also, you know, if you don't address that, you are also hiding the dip as well. Like, if I didn't show my kids that I'm struggling at that point in time, they know I am already, they can see it. So I had to show them that I was, but it's okay. We can come out of it together. And because of that, my kids talk to me every day about how they feel. And the journaling and everything that I do, which, you know, we started doing during this process, I do it. My kids have their own journals as well. So we all journal together and we talk about gratitude and everything. And it's part of our new lifestyle. You know, so we cope that way by, I can find out what they're thinking because they write it in their journal. You know, as they get older, that'll be more personal to them. But at the moment, it helps me be a parent because I know what they're thinking. Now, that identity shift, yeah, if I didn't put that life jacket on first and I didn't embrace the dip, I don't think I would have been able to come out of it because the challenges were massive. You know, they were really tough to cope with. And I did. And I was thinking about this the other day. If I didn't do my journey for myself when I first started, you know, when we talk about why behind the why, if I hadn't done that journey for me, you know, I think I said it before, that it was the first selfish thing I did for myself is looking after myself. And it's the only time I felt I've really been selfish in life. But if I hadn't done that, if I had done it for someone else, being put in this situation right now where I was a single mum and with circumstances that are not in my control, and having that comparison syndrome where, someone else is better than you, or, comparing yourself with looks, whatever you're comparing yourself with, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I wouldn't have been able to overcome those challenges because my reason for doing it would have been for someone else and not for myself.
100%. We see that quite a lot as well when you look at taking people through journeys, is that it really defines how their progress goes. A lot of people will sign up for various different reasons, triggers and all sorts, but you find who they're doing it for as those challenges come up. You see a lot of females that have gone through bad relationships, they'll come and do their physical journeys, and then when they start meeting with the guys again, then they stop taking self-care of themselves, and then their journey or their self-care just goes completely down because they got what they wanted. That their goal was to get in shape to get that boyfriend again, or to get that relationship, that love and that care. And then we see it equally with guys as well. As a lot of people try and get in shape to be part of the group, or to be as part of that accepted community, or what everyone else is doing. And when you hit that challenge point, that's when and those that go through it are the ones that then define their why behind the why. And speaking about this the other day, we were saying, like, you've got your trigger and it will only take you so far until that challenge. And then when you hit that challenge, you need to find that why behind the why to kind of take you over if you don't know it already. And without those two things kind of marrying in the middle, the trigger and the why behind your why, you won't last the challenge. And it's just a shame when people do start the journey for other reasons other than themselves. But that's the job of the coach, is to help them discover what their why behind the why.
And it usually is there. It always is a reason that's always deeper than just the physical. There might be a short-term goal to begin with, but there's always a long-term benefit to be had. It's just unlocking that. For me, it was easy to unlock because it was massive. It was like a mountain right there. You couldn't go around it. You had to do it. You had to go over it. So it wasn't something that was in the background. It was in my face, and I had to deal with it. But all the worries of becoming a single mum and looking after these girls, and they're looking to you to make, is everything going to be okay? You have to address those head on, and it was hard, really hard. But if I didn't have that new identity, and I was as the person that started R&T, I don't think, obviously I coped at that time, but this challenge would have been 10 times harder if I didn't have those coping mechanisms that we'd worked through. If it was just about food and training, I don't think I would have been able to cope in this particular circumstance. I just don't think I would have been able to do it. But we were stuck at home. I couldn't get food. So COVID hit, and my family got sick with COVID. So these are the people I rely on a day-to-day basis. So they were all out of, my mum, my aunties, everyone had COVID. Ocado, who usually delivered to me, wouldn't give me a slot because they were struggling with their own slots. I had 2 kids at home, so I couldn't get to a supermarket myself. And I was homeschooling them and running a job and running a house and doing everything else. And I thought, shit, I don't know how to do this. And luckily, I've got great friends who did my shopping for me. But you're put in a situation where if you don't have those structures, those systems, those strategies, whatever you have, and the support around you, and like Nathan's a great support to me, but that's because I'm open to him. And I say, this is what's happening to me. How do I do this? And I still would rely on him as my coach and say, what the hell do I do here? But if I didn't embrace all of that, then I would have been in a really shit place. To think that you can't feed your kids. Obviously, I'm an Indian household. I probably would have been able to survive for the next 3 years if I'd used all the lentils and flour.
Dal and rice. But
kids want what kids want. All of a sudden they had mad cravings for things that they haven't eaten in years, but they wanted angel cake. I mean, who eats angel cake anyway? But that's what they wanted. But I couldn't get it for them. And luckily, I've got my supply of oats, so I was all set. I could survive the COVID period too. But it was a real tough time. Your family are sick. They were out for 6 weeks because they got sick one after the other, so they had to end up self-isolating all the time. And I thought, I can't do this. I won't be able to. I can't get out of it. And my kids are going stir crazy. I was shouting at them all the time because I didn't know how to cope myself. You know, like with everyone else, everyone was put in. I'm not the only one. I'm sure everyone had this situation where all their structures were thrown out of the window and they can't cope, you know, with the new life. But for us, even walking was a problem because I couldn't take them out. You know, not just getting my steps in, just literally getting physical fresh air. It was very difficult. I took them into the garden. We did PE with Joe Wicks, and you know, we set up these little routines that we could do just to keep sane. But they were missing social interaction, and that was really tough. That was really, really tough. But if I didn't do all these things and, you know, gone through this entire journey, I don't think I would have been able to handle it. So it's more than a
Methodology.
diet, basically.
Yeah.
You know, it's not about dieting. That there's lessons to be learned afterwards.
Yeah. It's a system.
It's
System for living.
And that's why it's a lifestyle. You know, when people talk about a lifestyle solution, for me, I'm still in investment phase, but for me, it's still a lifestyle change. Like I am no longer that person before. Nothing to do with weight, but I have certain things that I've got in place that will mean that I will never be that person again. And it's not a and I'm not talking about a 60-kilo woman. I'm just talking about just ways of coping in life. And I work a certain way, and before I didn't know how I worked. You know, and now it's more self-awareness. I know how I work, so there's things that I can just plop into the day, and then I work everything else around it, and those things won't move necessarily.
One of the things about an investment phase is you can go through an investment phase and it not really be much about the diet. It shouldn't really be much about the diet. You know, 3 things I talk about is identity, mindset, and behavior. And it's these 3 things that have to change and you have to invest in order to create that version 2.0 and then lock in that long-term lifestyle solution. Because without those 3 changing, you're not really becoming a new person. You know, in order to marry the short-term change with the long-term transformation, those 3 things have to come into play. Because otherwise, without the system, without the accountability, you will just crumble.
Yeah.
And it's these 3 tenets that have to be addressed, and it takes time. It takes practice. It takes challenge to know if it's real. Like you need to go through a challenging period in order to know if your systems are correct, if your 3 S's are correct. You know, Nathan talks about the annual cycle, the investment cycle, and that you need to go through a social calendar because you only know if your 3 S's are strong if you've gone through periods of high stress, low stress, social holidays, Christmas holidays, birthdays, etc. That's the true test to your 3 S's.
Yeah.
And that's why it's an investment. That's a long-term investment phase.
And I think Nathan knows there's certain things that we just don't need to worry about anymore. Like he knows that my steps, it's not even, you don't even need to worry about those anymore because they're so inbuilt into my habits. It's the new norm. Like they're almost irrelevant because I know they're going to be done. You know, it's not a tracking thing anymore. It's just, I will absolutely get that done because that's just the way I live now. You know, same with my meals. It's just something you don't really need to track. I'm not talking about weighing food, but you know, eating a certain way, meal hygiene. It's almost so ingrained in you that it's not something you have to be consciously aware of because I put my knife and fork down between my bites. It's just very, very normal behavior for me now. It becomes the new norm. And once you get to that, that's when your new identity really takes place. Like before, if you're having to think about it all the time, then you're still the old person. It's the minute that it becomes so normal for you that you're not even thinking about it, then that's when 2.0 really comes in.
100%. That's brilliant. I think also on that is that that's in an investment phase, like an embracing the fluff period as well for some people. That is embracing the newer habits, but they're here to stay. Because you know you've got that initial driver that people want to get in shape, and then normally people will do it for a means. But like you've done it because you wanted to change your whole mentality, your whole habits. But still, people may just want that initially, that first visual change, and then they think that they can go back to their old habits in that investment phase. But I think in the investment phase, you embrace the fluff at the beginning that those habits are still here to stay. Yeah. Whether it's a dip or not, it's meant to be seen. But the things like that meal hygiene, the doing your batch cooking if you want to, and everyone sticks on their continuum wherever they want. Some people are really highly close to what they were in the process phase or grind phase. Some others are, you know, keeping the core rules on one other side. That's kind of the spectrum that you want to be on. But you know, most of the process if not like an aspect of all of it, will stay in to form that new norm.
Weighing food for me is absolutely normal. Like when someone says, "How can you do that on a day-to-day basis?" And are you still on R&T? We get that phrase a lot. Are you still on R&T? I am R&T. Like this is my new norm. Like for me, weighing my food, I don't have to worry about it. It takes a decision out of me. I know what I'm doing. And I would have planned my meals I've got rotating meals because I know what I like, and I don't need to change it up. And it's not because I'm on a diet or I'm on a plan, or this is just the way my life is now. It's just the new norm. And I think that's when you make a big identity shift, when it becomes normal everyday life, and it's not thinking and overthinking and am I buffering, am I not buffering. It's when you're able to just live your life as this new person and know that you're never going to be that old person. I don't think now, I can honestly say, I don't think there's anything that will make me that person again. That this is the new me. There is no going back, not because I don't want to. It's just because that person doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. This is the new me.
Love it. Just to circle back to you just talked about buffering, which shifts gears nicely into what we asked about the client side. Just to go back on the coach side, Nathan, for those because this is, I think it's a recurring problem. Sanj spoke about it really well from a client perspective, but from a coach perspective, what advice can you give people who've hit that consolidation, who entering that long-term lifestyle solution? They want to come away from buffering, but they're looking at social events in their calendars and getting anxious about it, and thinking, what are they going to eat? How are they going to adjust their food? What's, some of it's going to be meal hygiene, portion control, and all of that. But what's the real thing here that people need to address and think about in this new norm for them?
I think the mix between defining what your new norm is, defining what your social interactions are like, defining your best strategies in terms of the trade-off between sacrifice and freedom, and finding those kind of barriers. So for most people, the hardest factor is that new norm mentality of what's appropriate for you right now. And the hardest thing to say to someone as a coach is that you should only eat one plate of food, or that you should only eat this amount. This is normal for a person. This is normal for a 60-kilo guy, not a 100-kilo guy. And that's a really hard conversation to have with people. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things, is that 60-kilo guys compared to 100-kilo guys don't drink 10 pints. They don't drink 15 pints a week. They don't have 3 meals out on a week-to-week basis and have dessert at every one. They don't have that. They eat a main meal, and they choose whatever they want at that main meal because the rest of their week is consistent, and it makes no scrap of difference to their body weight, their process. We know, like, from my podcast, that there's been quite a lot of things that have gone on in terms of the food, but my body weight now, after going through this consolidated investment, I have an off-plan meal on a Friday that I really, really enjoy. Doesn't really affect my body weight at all, because the rest of the week is completely limited. Decision fatigue is completely the same every single week. So it's finding that reward to risk. And of course, if you want to go out 3 or 4 times a week or 3 to 4 meals per week, you're probably going to have to sacrifice some food somewhere in the rest of your day. But then, is 4 times a week something that you should be doing if you want to live that lifestyle solution? And that's the tough question, is okay, well, what's appropriate? And everyone has their own deemed level of what's appropriate. But there's a difference between the old habits and the old two plate person to a 1 moderate sized plate of what's appropriate for you right now.
It really comes back to what you want, right? And
yeah,
I think it is a harsh reality for a lot of people, because in the past they've gone to these events and they've eaten freely, and they've not realized how much they're eating. And this is not just the 60 to 100. This is even for a woman who might be 40 to 45 kilos now, that was previously 55 to 60.
Yeah.
That's 20% of their body weight, and that requires a completely different approach. You can't go to a social event and have a pizza, chips, and 2-3 drinks. If you want to have that, you're gonna have to cut back elsewhere. But then it's is that the lifestyle you want to live on a day-to-day basis, where you're restricting in the days just so you can have these big blowouts? That's an identity thing, I think. And it's going to have to become, okay, I'm going to eat normal calories through the week, and if I have an event like one of those, it'll be one slice of pizza, a couple of chips, and one drink, and that won't really make a difference in the rest of your week. But it's about making that change, and it's such a new thing to even get your head around, because you've never exercised portion control, basic portion control, when there's no tangible goal.
Go on that.
Without there being a checkpoint or a dieting phase or specific thing, you're still exercising portion control. And this is all that is. That is the real marker of an identity shift, is when you see someone and they're out, but they're not fussed by having everything on the menu. They're not fussed by making it a massive event, and they're not stressed about it. It's just like, yeah, I'm going out. Yeah, okay, I'll fancy a couple of slices of pizza, might have one drink, and that's it. It's not, all right, let's order pizza, chips, garlic bread, 3 beers, dessert, and the rest of it. And I think when you can exercise portion control without a checkpoint, that's when you know you've made a real lifestyle solution.
I think it's that checkpoint. That's the big one here, because in the process phase, you're working towards something. You're right. In the investment lifestyle phase, there is no something. So you have to, I mean, even when I went on holiday, I went through a phase where I wanted, the desserts with every meal. Then we have, then you set your own rules out. Okay, I'm going to have dessert, but I'm going to have it once, and that's going to be with my evening meal. There's certain things you could do. That doesn't mean a total blowout. But you also, one other problem that I used to have before is over buffering. And it would be starve. So I can go out. And this is when you're not in that 2.0 version, when you over buffer and then you think I can splurge in the evening. Well, that's not a lifestyle solution, is it? You have to be able to eat normally. You might have to cut down, obviously. The smaller you are, the less calories you have to play with anyway, otherwise you're going to be massive very, very quickly. But I will still have my, me and Nathan talk about it all the time. I'll still have my breakfast. I'll definitely have my breakfast. I'd probably have lunch as well, but that lunch is going to be protein, bit of fat. Maybe I'll cut the fats depending on what I'm going to have in the evening, but it'll be definitely protein and veg. And that allows me enough for the evening. And I always allow about 1,000 calories for an evening meal. And that's just the norm. If I know I'm going to go out, that's my rule, in general. But that doesn't mean I'll go out and eat 3,000 calories in the evening. I know roughly what's happening. And it's not a buffering thing. It's just, these are the rules that I've set in place. Even if I go to an Indian place, which I want the fried stuff, I do want it, But then I'll say, okay, I'm going to have one fried thing and the rest is going to be my rice and my protein or whatever it might be. It's still a rule that I've got in place that I can still have something that I want. Mm-hmm. So it satisfies that. Yeah, but it's not over.
Do you know, when you're in that situation, you've had to whittle down what you want as choice, and that's a powerful tool. That when you're not constrained by a diet, are you constrained by your choices? And when you go to those Indian restaurants, I love the food, absolutely love it. Is that to be able to choose whether you want a samosa, or you want pav bhaji, or you want dabeli, or you want chili paneer, or whatever, or a whole lot of them. The differentiating factor between someone that's got a lifestyle solution and someone that's in a cycle diet is that the lifestyle solution choose the one they want.
Yeah.
Versus a cycle dieter, because they've got this opportunity to have off-plan food, they have all of it.
Yeah.
That's that. I think if you had 20 people that went through an investment phase, and they voted themselves as lifestyle solution people, put them in front of a buffet, and those that come away with the food that they really wanted, versus the people that they chose a bit of everything or had loads of other things, just because they could, that would show you who's the lifestyle solution and who's still dieting in their own headspace.
That's massive.
That's huge.
I still eat the things I want. I do. I would still choose the thing that I want. But then everything else, I won't take everything. I'll take the thing that I want the most,
And you'll have that in moderation. You won't have all of them available.
So I won't have 10 samosas. I'll have that one samosa which hits that spot really nicely for me. And then I'll feel happy, happy days. I was still able to eat the thing that I wanted and walk away happy from it.
The concept of dieting in your own head is really big. Like you mentioned there. I think that comes back to playing the numbers game.
Yeah,
and,
it comes back to playing the game.
You're playing the game when you're out at the buffet, and then the next day you already know you're going to pull back because you're like, oh, it's cool, I'll pull back tomorrow, day after, and bring back the number to normal. And all you end up doing is just you end up hacking your body weight over a long period of time, which doesn't really show progress in the process. And the reality is you need those defined rules, which is why it really frustrates me when people get to a checkpoint, they get to consolidation, and then they don't see tangible results in the investment phase, when they don't realize that if they really play trial and error with their rules, and they really try and understand what makes them tick, and go through the process of formulating these rules, they will get the lifestyle solution they've always wanted, and they will fall out of the yo-yo cycle they've spent decades and decades in. And that is the only way out of it. The only way out of it is to not diet. It's to not diet in your head. It's to play trial and error with these rules, understand what ticks your boxes and what doesn't, and then run with them. Because until you get that, you won't have the body, the mind, the behavior, the mindset that you're after. Until you nail down on what makes you tick, you won't have it, and you'll keep fighting that constantly. And what you'll do is, without having a tangible checkpoint, you'll think, oh, this is not really working. I'm not really getting near or there. I'll just go back into diet mode. Mm-hmm. And you'll think you'll kid yourself into making fake progress. And all you're really doing is damaging yourself long-term, mentally and physically. And it's a really dangerous place to be in, that I wish more people understood the power of proper investment phases, because it has the opportunity to not only give you that 2.0, but to completely transform your life, just like Sanjay is talking about on this podcast.
Yeah, I think it's huge. You have to experiment a lot. I think people forget that bit. To find out what your rules are and what works well for you. I remember eating, before I used to eat bagels, loved them. I still have bagels now, but I realized that the big American bagels do nothing for me. Like, in terms of my digestion, I don't even enjoy them as much as I thought I used to enjoy them. And it was only because I allowed myself to actually put it on my plan and try it that I realized that was the case. And before, it would be like a craving, I really fancy bagels. But until you do it and you realize actually you don't fancy it at all, it's just because you think that you want it. And then you start thinking about, well, actually, what is this doing for my body? Like, how do I feel? I felt shit after it, really shit after it. So I know it's doing nothing for me. Whereas there's skinny bagels, first I can have 2 of those and it looks bigger on the plate, but also it works better for my body. It doesn't cause me the issues that those big, massive American New York bagels cause me. So unless you trial and error different protein sources, and again, most people will know I'm a creature, I can eat the same thing every day. But I had to understand that I'm in a lifestyle solution and not be afraid of food. I had to try lots of different things to know that actually this works for me, this doesn't work for me, that works for me, hate that, love that. And I like the taste of this, don't like the taste of this. And until you are able to do that without having guilt associated with it, that's when you know you've reached a different place.
When you invest in yourself like this, and you play this trial and error game, it's so powerful when you understand what ticks your boxes, because you just perform on another level. Like, you're firing on all the cylinders in everything you do. And you start to realize little things like for example, I know eggs on sourdough around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, it makes me tick and makes me fly all the way through the afternoon. It's just something I know. I know for me, dinner, meat and rice works really well. If I overdo it in the evening after that, it affects my sleep. And I have to play around with that. I have to try it with it, and then I have to try it without it. And then I have to look at how it affects my other rules and how it affects my performance in whatever my highest priorities are. And the more you can play this game, and the more you can experiment with it, and note down what you're doing, and stay accountable to someone to objectively guide you along the way, because it's so easy in these phases to become subjective and think, oh yeah, I think it's working, or yeah, I'm making progress, when in reality you're just in a cycle. If you can have someone objectively tell you and guide you along this process, it's life changing.
I know that I used to have this issue with boredom eating. People comfort eat in the evenings because they associate it with watching TV, for example. I was put in a situation where I have no company in the evenings. My kids go to bed and I'm sitting there alone. And the temptation in the past would have been, okay, I might as well eat, because I don't know how to fill that gap. But with the learnings that I've had, first of all, I know that I work better if I start eating later in the day. So, and it's not to do with intermittent fasting at all. It's just, I know that's the way I work. And I know that also it doesn't affect my training, whether I'm fasted or unfasted. So that's a lesson that I've learned about myself. But I also know I like backloading my calories, because I like going to sleep full, because it helps me sleep. Now, it's nothing to do with anything else. It's just, I know that if I try and fit everything in during the day, for me, a larger part of my calories or meals in the evening, doesn't get me thinking about other things, because I'm eating pretty much every 2 hours after 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. But also, it doesn't have that association with TV for me. It's everything's done. It's not, let me get crisps out or whatever it is. I don't need to do that. But also, I have my last meal of the day and I can go to bed like that because I know it doesn't have an impact on my sleep. But if I hadn't done that bit, I wouldn't have known whether it impacts me or not. And it is learning about how you work on a day-to-day basis, what works for you. That might not work for someone else at all, but if it works for you and it doesn't impact and makes you more productive, then that's fine. One person is going to be very different to another, but you have to go through the trial to understand if it does or not.
Yeah, I think trial and error is huge, and unfortunately, a lot of people get stuck in that. Yes, it was 100% week, or it was no, it was not worth doing week. And the art of coaching is, and understanding what coaching is that you come with your deck of cards to your coach, and you talk about structure, strategies, how to do better, how to get introspection, how to coach with what the cards you have on the table. And each week that comes around, you lay your cards on the table, and then you coach and you talk about it. But when that works, that's amazing, because then you go through that trial and error, because every single week is trial and error. It's like, okay, we think, because nothing is a perfect science. Nothing is. It can never be that way. But you laying your cards on the table with me allowed me to then trial something with you. Maybe that 11 a.m., which we started, that later backloading of food worked really, really well for you. But that was trial and error. But you have to come with that mindset of trialing something, and if it doesn't work out, then you go to the next week, because it's more about the whole journey. And the thing that people skew and doesn't allow them to get into that trial and error mentality is that when they have their focus completely on the scale weight, because that'll also impact how much cycle dieting they do over time as well when they move into the investment phase. Because if you're constantly looking at your scale weight in investment phase, you're only going to disappoint yourself, really. And that's going to be really hard to get out of. But you can only really go into trial and error firstly, if you've accepted the scale weight, or you don't do it, and then using the metrics for that. Like trial and error with rules is really, really big. Being able to have that 4 out of 7, 5 out of 7 for that week, 2 out of 7 that week, that allows coaching. And if you get 2 out of 7, then okay, cool, no one's judging you for 2 out of 7, but how do we now make it 5 out of 7? How do we now make it 7 out of 7? And that's what the investment phase is about. It's never about, okay, how much muscle did you build this last 2 weeks? It's actually about, well, your goal is to get better in social situations, or your goal is to feel better every single day. And when you do these rules every single day, you feel great. So let's try and repeat that every week. And normally something comes up every single week that is a challenge. Whether it's, I had birthday at the weekend, that makes my challenge to my meal prep, my meal timings, and how I ate different. That's a challenge. Whether you're moving from different phase to different phase, that's a challenge. Whether you've got a new change to a routine, COVID happens, influenza breaks out, whatever, you can find something, and then that's where the coach comes in and allows you to make that trial and error.
At this point, the physical becomes the byproduct. Now, if you're abiding by your rules and you're driving for that performance, you will build you will build muscle, you will build strength. All of that will come, and you'll by default, your body composition will improve. That's the beauty of this whole thing. But with improved body composition, you'll be performing at a new level. You'll be firing on all cylinders, and you become a high performer. And you'll be able to activate the vehicle that we talk about and enable it to take you into places in your life that you probably wouldn't have done before.
Yeah. I think we try and get the only thing with my training is I go in there, I look at my log, and it's how do I get better now. It's not about anything else. It's just I look at it and say, I got 10 reps last time. Am I going to get the 11th, or am I going to shift the weight this time? Which way are we going? And that's what you become, a performance mindset. And I think that it doesn't stop just with training. Your whole life becomes a performance mindset, and you move from being, kind of middle ground to trying to aim to be better everywhere, because it's just now inbuilt in you where you want to manage your food better, you want to manage your life better, you want to manage your children better, you want to manage your careers better. You know, it does actually has this waterfall effect, and it is becoming better everywhere. And now that's what, you know, it's weird. My training is getting better, but my life is becoming better, you know, and it's had that knock-on effect because I've allowed that to open that door, you know.
Yeah, you raise the stakes. You have higher standards of yourself.
Yeah.
Everything changes. You just accept less,
Yeah.
and you accept you want more for yourself, and that carries over. And once you unleash that vehicle, the amazing things happen. Like one thing for you, for example, you've used the vehicle to become a transformation coach,
Yeah.
and one within RNT as well. So
Yeah.
tell us about this story of Sanj 2.0.
So it was obviously never. You know, if someone ever told me that I was going to be a transformation coach, I would have laughed at them. I think my PE teachers would definitely have laughed at them. But anyone who knew me as that child, or you know, even a young adult, would be absolutely laughing, because I never knew I had it in me, first of all. But it was after I did my transformation. You know, you get a lot of. I think because my story was quite deep, you get a lot of people coming to you and asking you lots of questions. And it wasn't actually about losing weight. It was more, how did it help you? You know. And I just had a few mums talk to me randomly and say, you know, what did you do? And I always used to refer them to R&T. And then they said, you know, I just got talking to them. And then they said, well, can you help me? And it was at that point you release the mastermind. And we talk about this quite a lot, don't we? Where it becomes a passion or a hobby, and you think, have I got something here? But you released the mastermind last year in July, August time. And I thought, if I don't want to go into something and do it on a whim. You know, I want to make sure that I know what I'm doing. Like, it's very easy to say that just because you've been through a transformation journey that you're an expert, you know, and people actually look at you like you're an expert as well, but really you've got no clue. You know, you don't really know. You know how you did your own journey, but that's yours. You know, you don't know how that works for someone else. So I wanted to learn more about the mastermind, and you know, how you use different faces, and you know, just understand the whole concept of online coaching. So I signed up to the mastermind last year, but it made me realize that maybe I am able to apply this, because I usually use a lot of these faces in my day-to-day life, and all the challenges that I've faced, I've had to probably put on one of these faces, you know, in a space of sometimes an hour. You know, I've gone from being an enabler to an executor to a liberator, all within a very short space of time. You realize that actually I'm able to apply these same skills to as a coach, but also in my day-to-day life, and I use those skills normally on a day-to-day life as well. So I got a few clients, a few friends, and I tried, you know, the art of coaching with the you know, the skills that you guys gave me when I was doing the mastermind, and I realized that maybe that it's something that I can do as a profession. And you know, it's very difficult when I've been a chartered accountant for a very long time, like 16 years, you know, and to make that shift, you have to think of it as a job. And I think this is where, you know, we discussed that in I think you guys discussed it in the Facebook Live last week, where even now I'll be doing something and someone will say, well, what are you doing? And I say, I'm working. And that means I am working. You know, this is not a hobby. My R&T job is a job, you know, and it's moving away from that. It's a hobby, and people perceiving it to be a hobby where you're, you know, randomly helping some people with their diet plans. You know, that's not what this is about. And I treat it with the same high performance mentality that I've gained through my own transformation. I use that to want to be a high performance coach, you know, and it was recognizing that maybe I've got a skill set here that, yes, I want to help people, but I've probably been helping people in a non-physical way, non-transformation or body change way for a very long time. I have certain skills, and people naturally, for some reason, they want to talk to me. But there's wanting to talk to me and me enabling them to achieve what they want to achieve and marrying that. And doing it in this way, which I'm passionate about because it's completely changed my own life. I want to help people, but that's not the sole reason. That won't drive me to becoming the best coach or a good coach or a great coach. It has to be more than that. But I wanted to use those skills and become an online transformation coach.
What do you mean by it has to be more than that?
More than just a passion.
Yeah.
A passion and a hobby. I mean, you can get bored. You can get bored of it very easy. You can have a passion for something and that drives you so far. But to really, you have to want to do this. Like, example I can use is, there's no point me saying I've got a passion for something and I want to help someone, and then 2 months later leave. That means I didn't have that person's best interest in mind. I had my best interest because it satisfied certain need of mine to help people. But when you can take it further than that and say, I want to help this person for life, then you are moving into the realms of making it your profession. A hobby is something that, you like doing it. It makes you feel good. It's self-gratification in my mind anyway. You do it for fun. It's like, people like playing golf or like baking. You do it. It helps you because it makes someone else feel better for a short period of time, or it makes you feel good because you've given someone a cookie or something, and that gratifies them for a short period of time. But if you're trying to change someone's life, it has to be more than short-term gratification. So I don't want to be a coach that says I'm going to be here and this is my life and then leave 6 months later, because that hasn't enabled me to change someone's life. You have to be in it for the long haul. It's not a short-term thing that you do just for self-gratification. You're doing it for someone else, and the impact is massive.
Amazing. Nathan, do you have any words to say? I know you've been an integral part of Sanjeeta's transformation right from the start, New Year's Eve 2018, all the way to now, and you've seen all the different step changes she's made in her life, and seen her multiple times shed the skin into a new identity. Do you have anything to say?
The comment before about challenge and going through that dip is how you've got to where you are, with the force multiplier of 25 million. And I always believe the bigger the challenge, the bigger the reward. And you are a live testament to be able to go through a dip, multiple dips, and then come out the other side, and now you've got what you wanted in the first place. Maybe at the beginning, maybe in those dips you didn't see those things, but you now look back on them and you're now like, yeah, well, it makes sense why I had to go through that, or it's great that I've gone through that, because now I've got what I wanted out of it. Like, life is always a lesson, isn't it? It's always that duality.
You can't see it at the time. You have to go through it.
And I think, are we only going to now self-impose some more challenge on you by doing a photo shoot and trying to get veins on your abs? So, that's going to bring its own challenges. That's going to bring some more self-imposed challenge. And, like this journey is that self-imposed challenge that allows you to go through those dips and challenges and not have to go through, things that you've been through or what other people have been through on outside of the physical of the vehicle. Because if you didn't have to go through those things, I imagine you wouldn't. But when we can self-impose them to learn those same type of lessons, it's much more powerful when you're in control of those self-imposed lessons. Because I wouldn't want to go what you've been through, because it's a hell of a heck of a challenge.
But doing the photo shoot, I think is, I don't personally believe, like when I first signed up to the photo shoot, it was for a self-imposed challenge. It was like the other things I couldn't control, but this is something that I need to go through to see how I can come out the other end. But now, being as a coach, if I don't do this, I've got another layer of accountability. If I don't do this, how can I become a great coach? If I don't know what my clients are going through, yes, I've done a transformation, but have I gone to this level before? No. And if I want to become that great coach that I say I want to become, then I need to know what my clients will be feeling to get to that point there.
Yeah. If you want to take your clients to the extreme, you have to go to the extreme yourself.
Yeah.
Cool.
Amazing. Any final words, Sanj? Really, we're both, the whole team is excited to have you on board. I'm excited to see what you can do and the impact you're going to make. Do you have any final words before we wrap up?
No, just again, I said it before and I'll say it again. You guys absolutely changed my life. This is in the ultimate way. This is, before it was just to, get to a transformation, but you guys have really transformed my life completely, and led me to a different path. And I am forever grateful. And I will be the best coach that I can be for you guys and for my clients. So thank you.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Sanj, and always good to share a podcast with Nathan.
Always.